Hey babes, welcome to Stoned and Horny, the podcast all about exploring and expanding your knowledge in sex and cannabis with experts and friends. I'm your host, Hayley Herms, and today we're talking about cannabis use in public spaces and private spaces, pubes, anal, and orgasms with our special guest, Jane Wilde. Yay! So we're gonna get into it.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Okay. So when I was getting the new season ready and together, a lot of people, I was like, what do you want to hear about? And like the number one thing people said was like they wanted to hear about anal again.
Really?
And I was like, we never had a whole episode like dedicated it to before, but it came up lots of times but in like season one. And then when season 2 came around, I was like, really? I thought we touched on that a lot, but people were like, no, like we want to go more in depth.
They want more.
First and foremost, you are a cannabis smoker. And I love that about you. You every time I've ever like seen you at a party, anything, you are just giving like these 60s, 70s, stoner goddess vibes. Like, it's like, I feel like you're like a California girl. Were you born in California?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for that compliment. Because like I love anything 60s and 70s. So the fact that I'm giving that, this little fly, like,
oh no, fly away.
Loves me. Okay. No, I was not born in California. I'm from New York.
Oh, yes. Oh my God. We had this discussion because if you guys don't know, I fucking love New York.
Yeah.
So super
As a
jealous.
model, I'm sure you go to New York like a lot.
Yes. I can't imagine growing up with that.
I mean, it's weird because like, yeah, I grew up there. I lived there for the first 20 years of my life. Then I came to LA for my job, but it was just the place that I lived. It was never like, oh my God, I live in New York. Like,
you just seem so
way.
chill for a New Yorker.
Thank you. Well,
like, do you get that a lot? Because when I'm in New York, it's like this like almost aggressive intimacy. It's like you're on the subway and someone's like coughing a lot and they're like, shut the fuck up, but they're handing you a tissue. Yeah. So like it's a loving city, but it's like an aggressive, and I love how everyone like gets things done, but like you're so chill. Like I would just
Thank you. I love that term, like aggressive intimacy. Like I think I'm gonna start using that a little bit in my life, but because it's so fitting for so many things. I would say I definitely, I have my different hats that I wear. I can be chill. I give off the energy that I receive. So if somebody is chill and I feel like it's a chill environment, a good vibe, like at Curls parties and stuff, I'm very chill. When I'm in New York and people are walking fucking slow on the sidewalk, maybe I don't say anything out loud, but in my brain, I'm just like, you fucking idiots, get the fuck out of the way, get the fuck out.
Pass up on them? Because I will pass up on a person.
I will literally I will maneuver around like it's a video game, and then I will look back and just give them the dirtiest look.
Yes!
Like, what are you doing? It's always these tourist families that they just have to spread out on the whole sidewalk and take up the whole fucking thing. And I'm trying to get places. We got places to be.
And if you guys are listening, make sure you go to our YouTube channel to see Jane, because she's such a petite, tiny little girl. You would never like assume that she's like gonna come for you in New York.
I could be
so
feisty.
Watch out, because it's always the tiny ones, right?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely, it's weird. Sometimes I have like a little crisis inside where I'm like, who am I? Am I like a feisty, take no shit type of girl, or am I like a chill, laid back?
What's your sign?
I'm a Libra on the cusp.
Oh, okay. So there we go. You have it's the
balance.
Scales, the balance.
I'm constantly
exactly.
trying to find that balance. But I think when I'm in New York, New York like brings that feistiness out of me. Mm-hmm. And LA is definitely like a more chill vibe. I prefer the chill vibe, I have to say.
Okay, I think we need to swap.
Yeah, we need to swap.
I'm like
places.
about to go to New York soon and be like, oh yes, live my best life. But one of the things in New York, I feel like it was so much harder to get cannabis there before recent years. Yeah. So how did you get into cannabis, especially growing up in New York? Or did you wait till you like came to LA?
No, definitely didn't wait. I was already so addicted to weed by the time I came here. And then I was like, thank God I'm here, because so normalized, so easy here in California. The first time I ever smoked, I was 15 years old, just, at a party, like a very casual sense. And I just remember feeling so euphoric And just from like, 2 hits or something, like how every person is when they first smoke. Then when I was 17, like right around my senior year of high school, I started to smoke like pretty heavily. And I learned how to roll about a year after I started to smoke. And then it just went from there. It was like, I could never stop. And what we would do is we would get out of school, me and my group of friends, and we would all pool our money. So someone would be like, oh, I got 5, like I have a couple bucks, I have 10. And then however much weed we could get, there would be a couple of like, dealers, like low level dealers in the high school. And then there would just be like these shady random people we would meet. We met this one guy named Snoop. And he had all these drugs, and he was like, yo, you need Xannies, you need acid tabs. And now
he was at the high school, or you just met him on a corner?
We just met him like one day walking around like in the
Typical
neighborhood.
New York shit.
Typical. And it's like...
On a stoop?
Yeah. No, he wasn't on a stoop.
Okay.
He was like hanging out of his car. And at the time, we were so stoked because we were like, yes, a fucking reliable dealer. Now I'm 24. I look back and I'm like... Why was a grown man like giving acid tabs and Xannies to high schoolers? But so we got our weed, we found our ways. But yeah, it was very much like we had to keep it on the DL. And there was several times I got in trouble with the police and I had to appear in like, small court with like a summons, just for having, like paraphernalia and weed and stuff. But they were weird about it for such a long time. I'm very happy that it's like normalized now. The last time I was there's like, smoke shops and stuff. But New York, they're being weird about it because so cannabis is legal, but it's not legal to sell in a storefront quite yet. So it's like, where's the, like, you can buy it and you can sell it, but not in a store. So I'm like, where's the logic in that?
So then that only leaves like street dealers.
Yeah, and I'm like, let people, create a business out of it. That's what's happened in LA, and I think it's really improved everything. So I'm hoping that I think the whole damn country should just have it legalized at this. Like, do the Supreme Court thing like they did for gay marriage and just make it happen.
Yes.
We all deserve it.
Jane for president 2024.
Yeah, and I'm not a political person, but I definitely have my things that I'm like passionate about. And I really think that like as harmful, it's a Schedule 1 drug. It's on the same level as heroin. Like, that makes no sense. Whatever you think about weed, whether it's good or bad or detrimental or what, it's not equivalent to heroin in any way. So it shouldn't be considered a drug like that.
Do you think you use it for medicinal purposes at all? Like,
I do. I have, anxiety and depression, other mental health problems, and that's just like, that's medicine to me. That's how I unwind, and it's better than taking sleeping pills or other things or,
heavier sedatives.
Yeah.
More actually addictive
things like pills that, shouldn't really be prescribed to anyone. The fact that they were even invented is a fucking crime, in my opinion. Weed is a plant. It comes from the earth. So I think anything that comes from the earth should not be illegal for human consumption. If you want to do that, that's your prerogative.
Yes, which brings me to, because you're someone, and like myself, that uses it medicinally and recreationally,
Yes.
What do you think, like back in the day, we had smoking sections, non-smoking sections, and smoking sections. And there's so many times where my friends and I are like somewhere in like a public space and we're like, damn, I wish I could just fucking smoke here. Yeah. And I know with like vapes nowadays that like it's easy to like kind of like smoke in public, but it's not always like a time where I just want to like vape up. Sometimes I want to roll up and smoke actual cannabis and not a vape. And I think like, yes, there are some spaces versus other spaces where it's more appropriate to do so. So I get where there should be like limits, but do you think that we should be able to like legally smoke it in public and private spaces?
So my opinion on that, I think when it comes to open in the world, like outside, anything should be able to happen. Like people can smoke cigarettes walking down the street, so they should be able to smoke weed. And if you don't like it, you're outside, you can walk away. When it comes to indoor spaces, it's a little different because I know there are people that have like asthma and just people that are opposed to like the smoke in general, like the actual smoke.
Well, one thing I'd like to say that's included in that would be like, for example, if you sign a lease and they're like, oh, you can't smoke in the building, but like everyone's low key smoking in their building, which like, so I feel like that's something where there should be like an exception of cannabis or like, what do you think about like in terms of like lease agreements and rentals and stuff? Like, have you like had that encounter before where you like kind of like essentially had to lie, but it's like in capacity you're like, this is like a really small lie I could tell, but essentially let's say you get the wrong neighbor, because I used to have the neighbors from fucking hell, and if you get the wrong neighbor you could get arrested for marijuana possession, you could get fined, and worst comes to worst you could get evicted. So I feel like in terms of private spaces, like you said, there's people with asthma and this and that, and so I understand. Maybe like, for example, if like you're at a hookah lounge, like I could get like, why can't I just like open smoke cannabis at a hookah lounge?
So I think with those extra details, I think that if it's a shared private space, it just needs to be understood and agreed by everyone in that space that that's what would be happening. And as long as everyone consents, I really don't see a problem with that, like in certain bars or a hookah lounge or something like that. And obviously in your own home, you should fucking be able to do whatever you want. If you want to do drugs or drink or whatever the case, or smoke,
whether you rent or buy.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like, yes, you're renting, but the rental agreement is that is your space and you live there. You should be able to smoke weed in the place that you live. That's my opinion. As far as like bars and stuff like that, I think it definitely, as long as everybody like knows what it is and everyone who goes in there is okay with that. And if you're not okay with it, then just don't go in.
Yes.
That's how I feel. But I don't think it should be like a free for all, like how it used to be with cigarettes where you could smoke on planes. And because I get that some people don't like the smell and they don't like the smoke, but I think just like informed consent. But then otherwise I'm like, who gives a shit? Genuinely.
We love consent here.
Of course.
Because one of the things I hate is like if I'm going to like a rave or a concert and there's a whole smoking section for cigarette smokers. And then if I go there and pull out my joint, all of a sudden security's like, no.
Yeah, or even like at the Vegas airport, there's like a little smoking lounge in there, but it's like, it's for cigarettes. You can't smoke weed, even though weed is legal in Vegas and in California and so many states. It's like just because it's the airport, it's like a federal, and that's because it's still a Schedule I drug. So I think that if and when it is, you know, like nationally legalized or at least decriminalized and destigmatized, which is going to take a lot more time, even though we're making like really good strides, it still is very stigmatized. But I think, you know, it's going to happen. Like, people probably never thought that gay marriage would be legalized in the entire country, and it is. So it's like we just need to, you know, keep pushing and fighting that fight, and I think it's gonna happen.
I love that. Yes. Wow, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
I think that's great, and I agree with all of those things. I don't think I have anything more to like add on to that, because I think what you like, the overall message of consent is very important. And like the airport, which first of all, I didn't know there was a smoking section at that airport.
Yeah, in Vegas.
I don't smoke cigs, but still I probably want to go light up there. And that's a place where it's like, to buy cigarettes, there's also an age limit. So, you know, there isn't like children hanging out in the cigarette lounge.
And I think that's, you know, important. Like, I used to not be sure how I felt about like kids and weed, and then I realized like my dad took me to a music festival every year in New York since I was like 7 or 8 years old. For a couple of years I smelled weed. I didn't know what that was. So people are like, oh, you know, it's going to affect the kids negatively. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that smell was. And then I smelled weed in middle school on a school bus. Somebody had like a little thing of mini M&Ms and they opened it and there was weed in it. I smelled it and I was just like, oh, that's the smell from the music festival. And it just, that nostalgia hit me. It wasn't like a negative thing. So I think people overestimate like the negativity that kids are going to experience. Like, kids don't know what the fuck is going on. They're literally just going for the ride until they get some type of like consciousness in this world. So I really think people just like, you know, as long as you're not, you know, shoving it in their face and saying, do this, you need to do this. Just let kids be kids, and they're going to figure it out and figure out if they want to do that or if they don't. And I think that's fine. I think, it's a plant.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And there was two encounters, once in college where I had a teacher who, it was for a speech class, and she's like, you guys are all going to come in and read a children's book. And I'm like, easy enough, whatever. So her personal children's book that she brought in was a cannabis children's book.
Wow.
And that like blew my mind away. I was like, whoa, this is so progressive.
I didn't know that existed.
Right. And this was like 4 or 5 years ago.
wow.
So this was like blowing my mind.
Yeah.
And her husband worked in cannabis and she had kids. So I was like, interesting. It's like something that really has to be normalized because like their job revolved around it. And then recently I have a goddaughter and I smoke cannabis. I've never smoked it in front of her, the children, like I'll step outside, whatever, just like you would a cigarette or something of that nature.
Right.
But I have been thinking lately, and it's my gay dads, that's what I call them. My gay dads, they just fostered to adopted 3 children, which is beautiful. And so beautiful that I am the godmother of one of those children. But and they're progressive, but you got to ask parents. Every parents are different, no matter how progressive you think they are. And I asked like, hey, would you mind if I got a cannabis children's book to read to the children? I feel like, I'll probably vape around them one day. Maybe if it's like outdoors and they're like playing soccer and I'm like 50 feet away or something vaping. If they see me vaping, I don't want to like be like, this is a naughty thing. Cause then that makes kids want to do it even more.
Right.
And I want to be able to kind of talk to them about it in a way that they understand that's appropriate, but also like, this is for grown-ups and like I'm not telling you like no, but maybe one day when you're older, kind of like tattoos or piercings.
Right. And I think, kids grow up in a lot of like toxic environments, sometimes toxic situations around people that are drinking constantly. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with drinking recreationally. Most people do.
Yes.
And they do it around their kids. Nobody, acts like it's the worst thing in the world if a mom wants to have a glass of wine in front of the kids, but smoking a joint in front of the kids is somehow like so much worse than that. Even though alcohol can destroy your liver, turns into alcoholism. There's a lot more, in my opinion, negative attributes that come with alcohol versus cannabis. And that's not to say that like I said, you should be shoving it in their face, telling them what it is and saying, blah, 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 this is a joint. But it also doesn't mean you need to like act like it's this secret forbidden thing. Like you said, because kids are going to be curious no matter what, and they're going to find things out once they hit elementary school, middle school, and high school. I was doing things in high school that full adults were doing.
Same.
So it's like, you can try all you want to like shield kids from that stuff, but they're going to find it eventually. And if they're already like informed about it and they understand the benefits and the negatives, and they can make a more informed decision, like again, informed consent, like that's really all that matters. I don't see anything wrong with, a teenager or a young adult smoking weed, as long as they understand that like you shouldn't let it consume your entire life. There should definitely be limits, and like obviously don't drive or all the stuff.
The same things apply.
Yeah.
It's something that can be what's the word? Monitored, I guess.
Yeah.
Or like, just like drinking, there's a limit, there's this.
Yes.
But in order to get to that point, it needs to be, like you said, decriminalized, and there's things that need to change about that.
There just needs to be more education on it, I think, like similar to sex ed. Like, I mean, at least for me growing up, there was very little sexual education, and whatever it was like health class, like literally just body parts, and like this is a vagina, like this is a vulva. Like that's not, you're not talking about like the social aspects of it. And again, like with cannabis and sex, like that's what the podcast is about, and they go hand in hand like that because they're both so stigmatized, and they really shouldn't be because they're both totally normal, natural things. They can be so beneficial, but people just don't know how to like approach those topics and deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I started this podcast, because I was just in general, before the podcast, I considered myself a sex symbol. And a lot of people are like shocked when they see a plus size woman being like openly sexual and just like confident. And inherently in society, we're not taught that like fat people in general should be like confident or sexy. So I was already like kind of destigmatizing that. But the more I talked about sex, the more women would literally get my DMs or approach me or be like, I could never talk about this with my friends. I'm too afraid. I've never said anything. And I was like shocked, because all of my friends and I, like, we love talking about sex and cannabis. And it was like, I was their besties. So I love that. And I love that this platform. But if there is anything that I have learned from season 2, one of the biggest problems when it comes to like sexual harassment, STD, like almost everything we talked about this entire season. This is the last episode, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
On the finale?
Well, you're the finale of season 2.
I love that for me.
But if there's anything I've learned, the sex ed in America has made it detrimental to society, and that is why we see so many weird, fucked up things in America, and it comes back to like drugs and sex. The war on drugs and the stigma that comes around sex and just for men and all of that sort of things, which is a great segue, because we're like talking about what's just for men and women and all that fun stuff brings me to pubes.
Yes.
So pubes. Growing up, I feel like pubes were so stigmatized. I remember I wanted to shave my legs at an early age. My mom was like, no, wait. And then eventually I did it, and she didn't really care. But then in 7th grade, there was this girl that was like, I have hair on my arms and I shave my arms every day. And I noticed like I had little blonde hairs, and I was like, so then I was like, oh my God, this is something I should be self-conscious of. Like, and even though they were blonde, they were still kind of like thick. And I was like, ooh, no. So then I was like, I need to shave my arms. So almost every single day since 7th grade, I shave my arms to this day. I have just started myself destigmatizing pubes over the past like 2 or 3 years. And I'm 26. And so it wasn't until I was around like 23 where I started seeing women like the big trend was not shaving your armpits, right? And it was like edgy and bold. And I was like, wow, like these women don't care. And I'm like, what more goes into that? Like, how did we get here? Because pubes are like natural. Everyone has them. No matter what your gender is, what you identify, everyone has pubes.
True.
And so I was like, why am I so afraid? And then going deeper into like the 2000s, and that was the bald look was like the thing. Like, so that
bald
was
everywhere.
And it was like, even your eyebrows were super thin.
Yeah.
And
so thin.
Literally like pencil sticks. And so I was like, I think a lot of it has to do with culture, but then also men and what men have ingrained of what they believe from the culture as well.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
So I totally agree. And I also think that it just so happens that a lot of the trends that are in pornography happen to translate kind of into the real world, because it's always been like this and we're trying to change this, but people watch porn and they see that and they want to emulate, is that the right word? Emulate that in real life. So whether it be like the sex acts that they're seeing, or, you know, the guys, their bodies, or the women, you know, in the early 2000s and the 90s, like you said, that was very much the look. It was very bimbo-y, totally bare shaved, tanned, blonde, like those pencil eyebrows, like you said, totally like shaved pussy, like literally not a single hair, like, you know, like a prepubescent. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your preference. But I definitely think that women were kind of made to feel like if that's not the look, because before that, and then in the 70s, it was the complete opposite end of the spectrum, like not only a full bush on top, but hair everywhere. So I think, you know, it kind of, people rejected that for whatever reason.
A big swing.
Yeah, and then
which is cultural norms, is like if
it happens all the time with a lot of different trends, it goes like that. I think that now, like in 2022, it's kind of it's a lot more diverse, which I'm happy about. Although you still don't see that much like full bush anymore. There's still a lot of like fully shaved, but I think it started to come down a lot more to like personal preference. But it definitely, like, we can't act like porn hasn't like shaped the way that people think their body is supposed to look based on what they see. These are performers and actors and models. Like, their job is to look a certain way for the film or for the shot. It doesn't need to be necessarily reflective, or I don't think it should be reflective of how like the average person looks in their regular life. And even me, as like someone that is a porn star for 5 years, I'm starting to have to like unlearn certain things about, so I don't need to like change the way I look, or I don't need to like do all this effort just for what? Like for the male consumption, like you said. But it's really hard to unlearn that stuff. But like I'm really trying to. And part of that was having my bush, because, you know, I didn't have that when I was like 18 or 19. I was just, you know, totally shaving, just personal preference, I guess. And then I started to I had my favorite porn star was Riley Reid, and she has a big bush, a really nice bush. And I looked at that, and I would look at her and just be like, wow, like she's so cute and sexy, and like everyone loves her bush. Like there's really nothing wrong with like having that. And it means that you're a grown up, like you're a woman. Like, yeah, you have hair there, like however you style it or whatever. I think it's normal, and it should be acceptable, and even more than acceptable, it should be like applauded to have pubes, because that's what human beings have. It's like just embracing like what you have naturally.
Yes. And you literally like answered like half the questions I was going to ask you in terms of pubes. No, and like in the best possible way. I love that you talked about like what inspired you, because that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
If you got, like she mentioned, Jane is a great, amazing, famous porn star, but she has like, would you consider it a full bush?
It's a full, well, I'll describe it like this. And actually, it's so funny that we're talking about this, because I just asked, I was on a Discord call with like some guys in, you know, like their early to mid 20s. And I was the only girl. I just asked them, I was like, you guys, like when a girl says, oh, I have a bush, or you think of bush, do you think of like, you know, just the top decoration and then like the rest of everything is like shaved? Or do you think of like a full hair everywhere? And it was a little mixed. For me, it's I personally, I shave everything except this triangle, but the triangle is poppin'. I will say, like, she is full, she is wild and long, and it's not, you know, I shave around it because that's my preference. I like the feeling better and I like the look, but I like having that decoration. I feel I could describe it as I feel like Eve.
Ooh,
like from the Bible.
Yeah. Yes, I love
like,
that.
When you think about Adam and Eve, it's like, if you believe in that shit, they were probably like covered in hair, because human beings naturally have hair, and it's you don't have a razor like in the fucking Garden of Eden to like shave your pussy. Like it doesn't work like that.
And it didn't really occur to people. And one of the big things I should have mentioned earlier when it comes to pubes is a lot of the reason why the bald look was in, and just like shaving in general was in, is because it makes people money. And so in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, first we see guys shaving, and then the razors, and then we bring razors over to women. Then they're shaving their legs, then they're shaving their armpits, and all of a sudden it's like, if you don't shave as a woman, you are a dirty bitch.
You're gross at this point. And especially with the armpit thing, like that's really, it's kind of gotten out of control, like the negativity, I think. If a woman doesn't want to shave, why is it so just completely normal for a guy to have hair every single inch from his fucking toe knuckles to his hairline, and every single part of him can be covered in hair, including a full beard and mustache, hair in the fucking ears. But as a woman, if you have like stubble, not even a full hair, but just stubble, it's like, oh, that's gross. When did it become like that, and how can we change that? I really admire the women that even if it's not their preference, just for doing it like as a protest or whatever the case. I know another reason I admire Riley is because she did that around 2018 for like an entire year. She didn't shave her armpits, and she literally did it. She was like, this is like a big fuck you to all of the men that are like, you know, just think it's disgusting and jerk off to me. It's like, are you still gonna jerk off to me with these hairy pits? Yes.
True.
And are you going to look at yourself and question yourself and maybe change the way that you view things? Hopefully.
Yes.
So I admire the fuck out of that. And anyone that is challenging these norms and putting it out there, like, I think you're great. And, you know, I'm personally like scared to do something like that.
No, but you inspired me. Like, to me, what you just said about her is how I feel about you, because I met Jane through a brand called Assholes Live Forever. If you're not familiar,
they better be familiar.
At this point, right?
Yes.
And so we met at one of the parties, and when we'd see each other at the parties all the time. And over the summer, they have summer parties. And, you know, you're there with your bush.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, like, that girl is so beautiful. She does porn, and she does porn with a full bush. And I was just like, that is it really is like inspiring and dope, because I just stopped, like, I shave my armpits here and there because for plus size modeling. So unfortunately, as a model and our beauty standards, they're still pretty Western, unless they're like literally the progressive brands that are like, we love the pubes, like, grow it out. But usually for most jobs on there, sometimes it'll even tell you, like, shave your lips, shave your chin. Like, for beauty campaigns, literally the last beauty campaign I did a couple months ago, they had me shave my whole upper lip. They had me shave my whole jaw. Like, and they had everyone do it, because so when they get up, they just want, like, it to be such a clean, like,
and I get
slate.
that if it's like makeup, they want it to settle better, but also it's like, I think just in general with modeling and beauty and like that whole industry, they're very focused on portraying a certain image and not necessarily on just what is real.
Yes.
And the reality of it is, like, you know, you can see a model's face on a billboard like so close up and just not a single pore or wrinkle, and everything looks perfect. And then you buy the same products thinking you can look like that, and because, you know, we have like little baby hairs or whatever the case is, it's not going to come out the same. So I think like brands that are more inclusive like that and just more realistic in their marketing, like, I fuck with that, because there's nothing more disappointing than thinking you're going to look a certain way and then feeling like inferior when there's nothing wrong with like having hair on any part of your body. Like, I'm just tired of that rhetoric.
Yes.
I'm tired. Like, there's nothing wrong with it ever.
I agree. And on that note, I'm going to bring up what some of our viewers said.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting, because looking through the responses before I got here, it was interesting to see the contrast. I can't speak. Before I got here, it was interesting to see the contrast between what the men and the women said. And so I literally just said, what do you think about pubes? Like, open-ended discussion.
Yeah.
So most of the women said, I have no problem with them. It's natural for the body to grow. My 70s bush and I are doing great.
Love that.
Another one said, we love a bush in this house. And then another woman said, if you don't have them as a woman, you're missing out. And then another woman said, I don't discriminate. Another woman said, I don't mind them on other people, but I hate them on me because it's a sensory issue.
Okay.
So that's understandable. Like how you said, like, you like your bush, but in some areas you'd rather be shaved. You just like the way it feels.
You get itchy.
So I totally get that. So that was just some of the women's responses. But the men
Let's hear these
had a
fucking
lot
men.
to say. They said, depends. One said, women, I like shaved and wax or a cute little airstrip. Men, trimmed or shaved. And then another man said, to each their own.
Mm-hmm.
Another man said, I would rather them to be shaved. And then, so a few, I'm not going to lie, a few more of them were all pretty much, I prefer them to be shaved. And then we
Right.
had a couple more, I don't discriminate.
Yeah.
Or to each their own. And so I honestly thought more women were going to be like, no,
Anti.
yeah, I thought they were going to be like me or like most of the women I know. So it was so refreshing to see that women are embracing it now.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see how men had these high standards.
Yeah.
But kind of like what you said earlier, I was thinking, but I bet you they're fucking women with hella bush.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they're still going after them.
because when it comes to, and look, I don't think there's anything wrong with a personal preference. Everyone has a preference as long as you're not being mean
Yes.
or being like rude or whatever to someone that does have it. But I think that as long as people understand and acknowledge like where that preference stems from, and that it's not just like some random thing that you came up with, it's like if you watch pornography, and look, as somebody who is in pornography, I think I have a really good understanding of like how it can affect people and the effect that it can have. Like you said, they're going to be fucking someone in real life that might have a full bush and be totally okay with that because this is their real life. So they're like, this is my experience in real life. And there's kind of an understanding that a lot of the stuff you see in porn is not always completely accurate to what the average person does or looks like. And that's not to say, there's this myth that like, oh, all girls in porn get like a labiaplasty and have these tiny pussy. Like, that's not the case. But I will say porn definitely does kind of have these expectations and these standards as far as like pubes and shaving. Like, if you show up with like a full like 70s bush, as one person put it, with hair everywhere, some people might be okay with that. Other companies might say, here's a razor, can you go in the bathroom and kind of like take care of that?
Has that ever happened to you before?
No, because like I said, my preference is like the lips are bare.
So it's pretty much in porn, it's like a hit or miss with the bush as long as the lips are shaved.
Yeah, they just like the actual part that people are, seeing, like the vagina, they want that to be like no hair in porn, which whatever you think about it, that is just kind of the way it is. And it's, if that is going to change in mainstream porn, I will say like obviously amateur porn, independent companies, like it's a different case, but my experience has been in the mainstream industry for the most part.
Yes.
So I will say like, yeah, when people watch porn and then they see a completely bare pussy on like a grown woman and they're kind of intrigued by that and they've never seen something like that, they might think, yeah, like that's my preference. Like I would like to see something like that in real life, and it almost feels kind of unattainable to them. And I think that kind of attracts people to it more. But
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's like, I just, I have my vagina and I like my bush. I'm never going to get rid of my bush because I would rather have a bush than have all these cuts and bumps. And that's, that's also an inevitability sometimes. Mm-hmm. People think that like, oh, being a bear means it's going to actually be bare. No, that just means that your skin is exposed, and like the skin on your face, sometimes you get pimples and weird things happen. And, if I could have a beard as a man, like I would, because this is my biggest area for like acne and scarring and everything. So that's like, that's
happens.
just the way it is.
It's natural. Yeah.
Sometimes you want to cover that shit up. And I think, pubes, they should be embraced. I think it's preference, but it should definitely be acceptable.
Okay, I love that.
Thank
and
you.
On that note,
yes,
because we're going to talk about another taboo subject,
yes.
just like 2 inches south of pubes.
Yes, I'm ready.
Anal. Okay, so many people, Well, like I said, the number one thing, there's a lot of suggestions. We took most of the suggestions. We talked about them all season. But like with a banger, I was like, I need to bring in like an anal expert.
Thank you.
And if you aren't familiar with Jane's work, Jane Wilde, you can find her everywhere. She's probably like right on the main page of porn. But like
you.
literally, she is the anal queen, you guys.
Yeah.
So if I could have brought anyone, here she is, like, ah.
Thank you.
So, Jane,
Yes.
how did your anal journey start? Like, it's so intimidating. It's really, really intimidating. So, can you take us a little play by play of like how you got there and you just go off, sis.
Okay, so my first anal experience ever, I was 18 years old, and I had somebody in my life that was the only person that I was sleeping with at that time, and he wanted to try it. He had a really big dick, so I was like a little intimidated and scared, and I didn't know anything about like prepping or whatever, but we did it, and it ended up being, in that moment, a really enjoyable experience. And that was actually the first time I ever orgasmed, like from having sex.
Wow.
At that point, I don't know if I actually like had a real orgasm as I know it today, like with my vibrator or whatever. Like I give the best orgasms to myself. But so I tried it about 2 times or whatever, and it was fine. It was good. I enjoyed it in the moment, but it wasn't like, at that time I wasn't even thinking about being in porn yet, so I didn't think that anal was going to be like a part of my life ever. So I get into porn, and then in porn, anal's kind of it's like a stepping stone, and a lot of people
you get paid more for anal, right?
You get paid more for that type of scene, and also it's a very popular act, really popular category. So if you do a lot of it, you have the potential to really like grow your brand and career quickly and in a really like great way. So basically any like super popular porn star, all the winners of like, performer of the year at the AVNs, like they all do anal and they all do it fabulously. So I came in, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was literally just like coasting, and I was like, whatever happens, like I'm just gonna go with the flow, but wasn't thinking about like strategically, oh, when am I gonna do anal? My agent at the time, my porn agent, he said, you can wait probably like a year, you don't need to do it anytime soon. About 6 months in, he called me and he said, I have an opportunity that was presented to us, or this company wants to shoot your first. It's a really good company, and I think, it could be a good opportunity for you. And I thought about it, and I didn't really see any reason to not do it. I thought about, the potential that it could have, and I knew I had tried it before, and I was like, my mentality going into it was, if I don't enjoy it for whatever reason, I just don't have to do it again. But I was very open-minded, like sexually, and just in the industry, I got in wanting to like try certain things and experiment. So I did that scene, and then I like I had to figure out how to do an enema and like all of that crazy stuff that comes with it,
which we'll get to in a second.
Yes,
I think that's the details people really want to hear.
Honestly,
but keep going with what you're saying.
Yes, I will. And so I just went into it and I did the scene, and I was shocked because it was so easy for me, and I really liked how it felt. Like it felt different, but it felt really good.
So you really enjoy it. It's not an act. It's not like
yeah. I mean, I will say, like, obviously in porn, it's very mainstream porn. I will say, very performative.
Yes.
So I definitely like put on my little show, and I'm not always like, I wouldn't always be screaming at the top of my lungs in pleasure if it was real life. And I will say there are certain scenes when I'm like, I eventually warm up to it, but I'm not going to act like every dick just went in seamlessly. Sometimes it hurts a little bit and you're just like, ooh, but then, just with the way my body is, it opened up to it. And I will say, like, as far as the enema thing, I really think that, because I have so many women and girls come to me and tell me they want to try anal, but they're so nervous and scared. And the part that they're the most nervous about is the prep and the enema itself, not even the actual anal. And I just think that's so funny because I will tell you guys, like, it's so simple. It really is.
So I don't really know what an enema entails. Like, what is that
basically,
essentially?
I'll just tell you like what I do and how I prepare. I just did an anal scene on Saturday, so I'll tell you like what my method is. So a lot of people think, and they get scared, intimidated because they think, oh, I can't eat. I have to starve myself. I've heard girls tell me that they will starve.
That's what I would do.
Myth. They're like, oh, I starved for 2 days before the scene. That's why you're scared, because you've been starving for 48 hours. You have a headache. You don't feel well. How are you going to go into something and enjoy it when you don't even feel good in general? So what I do after almost 5 years of doing anal and regularly, let's say the scene is the next day, and I estimate I'll probably be having the dick in my ass like around 2 p.m. Okay. So now it's the night before. It's, like 6, 7 p.m. Eat my dinner, totally normal. Maybe not have like a snack or whatever. Go to bed, wake up in the morning. Obviously, you do your thing in the morning. Whatever happens, and you feel good. So you just get these little saline enemas from CVS. Okay. You dump out the solution, because the saline, what those are actually for is for like constipated people that like desperately need to like empty their bowels, or if you're having like a colonoscopy or something. So you don't want to use that because it can really like upset your stomach. It makes your bowels like do that basically. Okay. So you just fill it with warm water, dump the solution and put warm water, and it's like this tiny little squeeze bottle with like a small tip. You literally put the bottle, you go in like doggy style position, put the tip in your butt, squeeze the bottle, the water goes into your butt, get it all out or whatever. Then you stand up and you'll feel it, and you'll feel like something's there, like I need to push it out. And you go do your thing, and, stuff is going to come out, whatever's there. And
you do it a few times?
You do it as many times as needed. Sometimes it takes me 30 minutes. Sometimes it takes me an hour, sometimes longer. But, like, eventually the water will run clear when you push it out. And then when you're pushing out clear water, that means there's nothing left for the water to be, like, dragging out of you. That means if there's nothing that the water's bringing out, you're going to put a dick in there, and nothing is going to come out with it because there's nothing there.
And that's it?
That's it. That's literally it.
That's wow.
It. Yeah. And then some girls obviously use, like toys to like relax or stretch it. I personally don't use them because I think some people like overdo it right before, and then they're sore and then it doesn't feel good. For me, like the best toy to stretch you out is like the toy that you're going to be using. So what I do is I'll just ask the guy like right before we're about to do it, I'll say, can you just like put it in really slow and like in a comfortable position, usually missionary. And then once it's in and like a couple times, and then you can really focus on like having that connection with somebody. This is for porn, obviously. If you do it in your regular life, probably like with your partner or whatever, just have them go really, really slow, use lube. And I think it's also a mental thing. Like once you're cleaned out and a lot of girls are just embarrassed or afraid that they're going to like shit on their partner's dick.
That's happened to me before.
It happened to me too. It happens to everybody.
Like what's the worst thing that's happened to you?
Oh my God. One time I was doing an oil anal scene, which is like just slippery, body covered in oil. And the guy that I was working with is like this maniac in a good way. He did crazy scenes, and his favorite thing to do would be to take the bottle of oil and literally put the tip in your butthole and then have the girl like squirt oil out of her. So he'll pour it, fuck it, and then take his dick out, and then the oil will just like explode out of your butthole. So for me, he was having me in this like weird upside down contorted position and putting so much oil inside me. When you put oil's liquid, right? So imagine, you're doing
and you were upside down.
Yes, I'm upside down. So the oil's going so deep inside me, possibly to a place that, like, my enema earlier in the day did not reach, and there's still, like, way up in here. And then when I go back right side up, it's like it kind of brings everything. And he told me, he was like, push, push, push. He's this Russian guy. So he's like, push, push, push. I push, and it was stuff. But honestly,
did that scene ever come out?
It came out. No, they cut around that. I was so embarrassed in that moment. I was just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. This is so gross." And he was like, "No, baby, this is what happened when we do anal."
I
was like, okay.
love that.
Yeah, so I was like, just no more oil in the butt. And we finished the scene. But, like, yeah, I've shit on plenty of dicks. Like, it happens.
It happens.
But you figure out the method that, like, works for you. And then once you have that method down, it's like clockwork. It's so easy. And then you just start to have this confidence. And once you just know you're clean,
you're like, great.
That's it. Yeah.
Get it. So just like in short, you would eat an early-ish dinner, 6, 7.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning.
Just don't eat breakfast.
And how long? Don't eat breakfast. And then how long do you wait for beforehand to do it? The enema before the scene.
So a big mistake that people make is they do the enema like right before. Okay. For me, it's like, well, I guess everyone's different. For me personally, I need like several hours after the fact, because sometimes like water just gets stuck up there for whatever reason.
Okay.
But if you're walking around, like, then gravity will eventually, like, bring it down, or it'll absorb. If the danger of doing the enema too close to the act is that, let's say, there's still some water stuck up there, the water could be like sloshing around, like I said, going places it doesn't need to be going, and dragging stuff that doesn't need to be there.
Wait a few hours.
Yeah, you need that time to just let the water either like travel out itself or like absorb into your colon or whatever the case is. So I usually do the enema like first thing when I wake up, and then I can just like rest and be comfortable and calm the whole day whenever the scene actually happens, just knowing that like I'm already cleaned out and I haven't eaten anything, so nothing is gonna be there. Like there's nothing that is traveling. And also, when you don't eat for a certain amount of hours, you're fasting or whatever it is, your digestive tract, like, it slows down and it eventually like halts for a little bit. That's like, how your body like copes with not having food in it. It's like, Where's the fucking food? So I'm just gonna like chill for a bit because there's nothing to digest right now. So then let's say, your anal scene's in 2 hours. It's at like 2 p.m. and it's noon. You can eat a sandwich at noon and you're not gonna like shit that sandwich out until way later or even the next day. Okay. Because your system's already like slow that it's not gonna, 2 hours is not enough time for it to digest. So when people are like, oh, I haven't eaten for 2 days, I'm like, girl, eat a fucking sandwich right before. Like, you can eat pasta, you can eat whatever you need to eat just right before. It's like, find that correct space and you'll be good. Okay. At a certain point, it's like that flies back. It's like there's no going back. Like, you're gonna be good no matter what. You're clean.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is there any other tips that people should know?
So I said the enema, the eating stuff. Definitely, like, I mean, I tell girls like that want to try anal and they're nervous, like with their partner or whatever, use a vibrator. Like, if you really like a vibrator, because they're afraid of the pain. And I get that the only time you should feel or you do feel pain is if you're tense and your body's like clenched, because then it's like, even I get that sometimes if my body's not fully relaxed and they try to put it in, it sends this, it's almost like this paralyzing pain up your spine and you feel like you can't move for a second. What I do is like, I just started to associate the pain, quote unquote, if you can even call it that, with pleasure. So if it might be an uncomfortable feeling at first because it's unfamiliar, but if you start to associate that with a feeling that you already like, which is like a fucking vibrator or whatever the case is, like, getting head or whatever, and then you're like, wait, this actually feels really good, and it kind of enhances it because
Yes.
it's just like multiple sensations.
Yes.
So that's just my advice. But yeah.
I love that. I've done anal before, not a ton by any means, but that's like the feeling is like so scary, like you said. But I feel like a lot of it is like guys are not using lube.
They're not, and they just either go I literally tell them, I'm like, go so slow, like as if you go too fast, I'm gonna explode like a bomb. Like literally go in, like you're literally like doing one of those like, you know, wire tripping things. Yeah, like they just need to go so slow and really like almost be romantic about it. Like some girls want to they don't want to feel like a piece of meat or feel like, oh, I'm doing this for my pleasure. Like I think those types of things can really enhance the experience. And that's another thing that porn kind of sometimes fails at, is showing that like not every girl is getting fucked in the ass upside down and like screaming the whole time. Like that's not necessarily a realistic depiction of anal for like a regular person. So it's performative. It's like, you know, it's like almost like a circus. But anal for real life, I think just definitely take it slow, lube, think about pleasure, and prep and have fun with it.
Love that. And like one more question relating towards anal before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Do you ever, like realistically, do you ever get scared about like when you're older or like being able to poop or anything like that? Because I do hear that of people are like, I'm scared like I'm going to rip my asshole and I'm going to be like 80 and shitting my pants. Like, is that like a myth, or is there anything to like be proactive about that? Or like,
I think it's a myth because when you think about it, it's like men who get fucked in the ass, they only have the one hole, so it's not like, you know, this taboo for gay men. It's not like a taboo thing to do anal, and you know, they could get fucked in the ass every single day by a different dick, and nobody talks about, oh, all gay men are going to be wearing diapers. It's only the women that are going to be wearing diapers. So it's kind of like a misogynistic thing when you really think, look, I'm not going to say that if you shove up, and look, I've seen some very crazy anal stunts on some of these like European sites. In my opinion, they can take it too far. And I think that type of stuff, like I've seen a girl put a literal baseball bat up her ass and like fuck herself with that type of stuff. If you do that on a regular basis for many years, I think that you could probably have some type of like problems down there, but that's like you're basically abusing your body at that point. Regular anal sex with a normal sized penis, I don't think there's really anything to worry about in that case.
So you haven't done any of those like crazy things?
I physically can't. It won't. People say, oh my God, you're such an anal queen, and I'm like, you haven't seen that girl and that girl, because like I see some of these.
Oh, I still think like, you're an anal queen.
Thank you. Yeah, with normal sized penises. But like,
with penises in general.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Well, queen, and I love that you said that and you broke some of the stigma there, because that's something I would have never thought about. Like you said, I've literally never heard anyone be like, a gay man's gonna be in diapers. Right. But like you said, the women, I hear that.
Because it's a taboo thing. It's like, they're like, why would you do anal when you have a vagina? But it's like, because I have a butthole too.
Yeah.
And I want to use it and it feels good. So like, why shouldn't we? Sex is sex. Like, who cares what type of sex it is, you know?
When I first started using a butt plug during sex, I was like, I'm coming so much like harder and faster. And it was like life changing. And I was like, I cannot believe I didn't try a butt plug sooner. So maybe I guess my personal advice is, as like a non-porn star, would be maybe it's still like your enema thing. I got to try that.
Try it.
But I would also be like, maybe like you said, a vibrator or a butt plug. And with butt plug companies, they like sell ranges, so you can get like a small, medium, large. To be a huge one.
I would say for a newcomer, and I'm sorry, Krill, don't use the Assholes Live Forever butt plug as your first one. It is so big, even for me, and I've used many butt plugs. The first time I used that, I was like, oh my God, that is big, but it always goes in eventually.
Is there any butt plugs that you do recommend?
Not a particular brand. I think as far as material, probably go with metal. because metal just, in my opinion, it just moves easier, like
especially
on the skin.
lube.
Yeah, with lube, it's better. But I think, just kind of, if you look up like anal dilator kit or anal training, that you'll see like a bunch of, it's like a set of like 6 blue little plugs, and they go up in size. And that's a good way to just like start small and just figure out like what's comfortable for you, especially if you're not in porn and you don't have anything to prove, like, and you're just doing it for pleasure. Just experiment and like have fun and just try to figure out like what works for you and go with it.
Oh my God. I love that. You're amazing. I could literally like talk to you
I know,
forever.
we could talk for hours. This is so fun.
Yeah, you're so insightful and
Thank
knowledgeable.
you.
And with that said, where can everybody find you so that they can gain some more wisdom from you?
So my Instagram is wildsexual_, WILDE sexual _. My Twitter is Jane Wilde XXX, and then from there you can find all my other spicy links and my Twitch and my YouTube and everything. And yeah, we out here.
Yes,
Yay.
I love that. That concludes season 2 of Stoned and Horny.
Congratulations.
I cannot believe this season just flew by. I can't wait for season 3. Hopefully we can have you back again and talk about more stuff.
I would love to.
Yeah, you're just, like I said, full of wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you.
So that concludes not only today's episode, but that concludes season 2. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, if you want a chance to join the conversation, follow us on Instagram at the Stoned and Horny Podcast and leave a comment. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social medias to stay up with Stoned and Horny and find out when season 3 is coming back. My name is Hayley Herms, and I'll see you guys for next season.